IVM.
Hey everybody, welcome to another amazing week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Paytm Money, for supporting the network. Guys, you should definitely check out some of the content that we're doing recently, which is somewhat COVID-related. Pawan's been doing an awesome job on the Pragati Podcast. All Thing Policy has also got a tremendous number of really great episodes about what's going on and the impact. We talk about this stuff on Cyrus Says, especially in the Cock and Bull episode. On Advertising is Dead, Varun's had a couple of episodes where he's spoken about the impact of this, as is Karthik on the Filter Coffee podcast. And I mean, across the network, definitely do check it out. I'm sure you'll enjoy yourself. And with that, let's get you to your show.
Welcome to a very special episode of the Geek Food Podcast with me, Tejas. And today we've got Dinkar and Jishnu in our respective studios. How's it going, guys?
It's going spectacularly.
It is the same as it's been.
That's a bit much.
I was trying to be positive. Yeah, it's going fine.
No. It's going all right. Yes, it's going as well as it can, I suppose.
True.
And we're excited to continue giving you episodes of the podcast, albeit once a week. But really solid, episodes where we go back to the foundations sometimes of our nerdy interests. Today we will be doing one such episode where we take it back. We take it way back. Even back before we were born, there was a comic book that defined many of our early reading kind of interests, and it was not really defined as a graphic novel or a comic book in this traditional sense, which like 16 pages, loose kind of continuing series, but somewhere in between. Today we're going to be talking about Hergé's Tintin, or Tintin as they say in the original language, but we'll call it Tintin because as it has been repeatedly told to me, Tintin just sounds really
Hergé,
dumb.
you sure? I always grew
Hergé,
up with when I first started it, I would have been like 6 or 7, and I loved Hergé.
Okay, so his name is not really Hergé. Obviously, it's the first two. It's his initials phonetically
Initial syllables.
spoken.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
what's his name?
R and J, which is R and G. Yes, I want to say.
Yeah.
So he obviously was the principal illustrator and the writer for Tintin. Really kind of doesn't really have anything to do with any of our upbringing. It's a very European kind of, set story, but for some reason has this global appeal because everybody wants to be Tintin, this young, what I suspect to be Belgian.
He is Belgian, yes.
He is Belgian, yeah.
So he and Hercule Poirot, some of the best of the Belgian exports. And so Tintin was this young reporter, journalist who kind of
supposedly a reporter. I have
he is a reporter. We only find out that he is a reporter. Yeah, well, because I feel he always goes in search of, at least in like the earlier stories before even Haddock. And I love how they introduced new characters as the series went along. But Tintin in America is probably the one of the first
I just watched
stories I read.
Yeah.
Tintin in America is it's a solo Tintin story, if that's such a thing. It's just Tintin and Snowy on a journalistic kind of quest to, find out the underworld mafia and kind of expose them, and Al Capone and all of these things. And that was the first story where it was clear to me, oh, okay, cool, this guy's going to do a story as such. Yeah. And he also just happens to be like a detective, like an investigative journalist, but like who's also kind of an action hero in our eyes. So what were your first impressions of Tintin growing up?
Same. I mean, I recall that I wrote what was it? What do you call them? Book report. Yes, when I was 8 years old. When I was 8 years old, I wrote a book report. Now, this is when I was in Kazakhstan for a year. So I was in a class with like 18 or so kids from 15 odd countries. And nobody had a damn clue what the hell I was talking about. One, because they were like, wait a minute, you're doing a... yeah, because they were like, wait a minute, you're doing a book report on a comic book? And I was like, Yeah, but it's great. That's why I'm doing it. So I don't think my teacher was terribly amused that I was kind of doing a cop out by doing a book report on a comic book while everybody else was actually doing novels. But she loved it because she knew what Tintin was. But nobody else in the class had a damn clue. But yeah, I did it on Tintin in America, and you're right. That is one of the ones that is very directly plot driven, based on the fact that he is a reporter who is reporting about the mob, and therefore the mob goes after him, and then he has to sort of do what he does. And I realized that this guy is like one of the most tenacious pseudo superheroes ever, because he has his from his bag of tricks, right? So like I watched, funny enough, I watched that very episode last night on YouTube. By the way, almost
nice.
Almost
it's
all
on
the
Amazon
episodes
Prime.
on
Both the animated series are on.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I watched a little bit of The Broken Year from the 1950s one, and then I watched.
That's also a solo one, right? Like that's
fully, and that's like silent. It's a silent series, and the animation is beautiful. But anyway, so I was watching Tintin in America yesterday, and he does things like he's trapped in the back of a cab that is being driven by a mob guy, so he gets stuck in there. How does he get out? He pulls out his Swiss Army knife and cuts a hole in the floor of the cab and just crawls out. Then he's
basically like a MacGyver.
Completely. But then he's also part Spider-Man, because then he is trying to infiltrate the mob's hideout, which is on the upper level of this building in the middle of Chicago. So how does he climb the building? He just like squeezes between two buildings, like puts his back up against one and his feet up against the other, and just literally like carries himself web crawling, wall crawling.
He is very tenacious. That's a great word to describe him.
And then Snowy, like a badass, when he gets drowned, the dude Tintin gets knocked out, gets thrown into the ocean, left for dead. But Snowy's alive, and Snowy jumps in with him, grabs him off the bottom of the ocean, and just like pulls him up. This tiny little guy.
So Snowy is Tintin.
He's the unsung hero of the Tintin books.
He's Tintin in dog form. Except he has weaknesses, which is great.
He's an alcoholic, yes.
Alcoholic, and he's just a glutton.
Yeah,
he's a dog.
But I do want to. I want to talk about the reporting thing though, because there is one comic, one of the very first ones. It might be the first one. I don't know, but there's one which I have, which is called "An Adventure of Tintin, Freelance Reporter for." Now I'm not going to pronounce this right. Freelance reporter for Le Vingtième Siècle.
Yes, like Living Time or something like that. I believe that is the first one.
Yeah, if you can see that. I don't know how to say that.
Sure.
That one.
Living Time cycle. I don't know.
Yeah, like so when he started, he was fully reporter. And then I think once Calculus and Haddock and all these guys came in, then it was just like, okay, now we're just the Hardy Boys, basically.
They did eventually run out. A lot of stories begin with him doing something because it's an assignment or because he wants to cover a story, and then just like completely loses track. He's possibly the worst employee to have.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, he's very much in the vein of like, he's a very Lois Lane kind of reporter, right? Like who gets directly involved with the subjects of the story. Yeah. And then just becomes a part of the entire story itself. Yeah. So, what about you, Dinkar? How did you kind of experience the Tintin growing up?
Through the books, I know I started reading them like super young, probably like 6 or 7, and I would mostly issue them from our library, but also Archie's library, of course. You remember how Archie's library had an entire shelf of Asterix and a shelf of Tintin, and the Tintins were so few in number, like you couldn't ever get all of them. It was a freaking pain.
Plus, that was the case for Asterix. That's why I've always been a Tintin boy more than Asterix, just because couldn't get it.
I feel like those are weirdly inextricably tied because I think of this sort of page format and like, the way it was
exactly.
Kind of
I think just because of the form factor of the books, everyone's like, well, Asterix and Tintin, they go together.
They go together in the bookshelf, surely. So that's definitely one thing. The other thing that I remember very clearly, my mother was a big fan and my brother was, and they started collecting the issues. And then obviously they were like, as I grew up reading, I kind of discovered it myself. But the other thing that was really, really close to my heart was watching the animated version of it on Channel 33.
Yes.
Back in Dubai. It would play, and like it was like a huge revelation, I remember, because we were like, oh my God, this thing is this thing now. And it's just, and the cool thing is that
the art was so remarkably similar. It was amazing.
Exactly. And it, Tintin, I don't know, maybe it was a function of how old I was, but I was like, but this is what Tintin actually does sound like. This is a perfect kind of voice cast. It was perfect, right?
Though,
so I remember that very, very
found he's kind of Canadian. I could be wrong, but I definitely heard some stories.
Yeah, he's definitely Canadian. I think because of the whole French-Canadian production team, I want to say. Maybe, there are two versions of The Adventures of Tintin. There's the older, I think maybe 70s version of the animated show. And then there's also a much more recent, relatively,
91.
which is like the 90s. Yeah. At least we saw it in the 90s. I'm not sure when it was produced.
It came out 91, yeah.
It came out 91, yeah. And I think they did it really well because they did something way back then which I didn't think they would do, which was like they would break they wouldn't try and condense the entire story into 22 minutes. They would do a part 1, part 2, and especially for longer stories, explorers on the moon and Destination Moon, or cigars, and so it was so I really enjoyed that. Anyway, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back and talk about some of the other characters and their intros into the Tintin lore.
Beta, did you know 79% of all scientists in NASA are Indian only?
देखो, इंडिया में टैक्स सिर्फ मिडिल क्लास भरती है. Everyone is just enjoying free यार.
आजकल के youngsters are only interested in partying and enjoying. उनको देश की पड़ी ही नहीं है.
बेटा तुम बस शादी कर लो, उसके बाद तो you can enjoy life like anything.
I will tell you what this country needs. This country needs 15 years of dictatorship. That is the only way to become a superpower. See the Chinese, how much they've progressed.
सुनो, तुमने ये WhatsApp forward देखा?
So what's common between all of these statements?
They're all absolutely rubbish.
Fake WhatsApp forwards that spread like wildfire.
And statements that defy any logic.
We are here to debunk them all.
We're your family WhatsApp group's worst nightmare. We're what happens when you read a book.
Basically, we're just a bunch of guys who want to cut through the bullshit of everyone saying this, how it won't be true.
So that the next time someone confidently squeezes out some WhatsApp or Twitter BS, you can look them dead in the eye and go, Uncle, please sit.
So join me, Joel.
And me, Tushar.
Every Mondays for a fresh new episode of Uncle, Please Sit.
Hey everybody, we're back. We're talking about Tintin by Hergé. The real name, I just did a quick Google, is by Georges Remy, I think, and that's his real name. So he swapped the letter. So
he's Remy, George.
Yeah, so that's how they got his. That's how he got his moniker. But yeah, we're talking about Tintin. We're talking about the wonderful cast of characters that appear in all his books. I used to really enjoy all the solo Tintin stories because you kind of get a little more time with just him as opposed to Thompson, Caddock, Calculus, etc. I'm going to start by asking you guys, what is your favorite solo Tintin adventure? Okay, I'll and then I'll tell you mine after that. Yeah, but go ahead. Well, Dinkar, what's your favorite solo?
That's odd because for me, I always liked the gang aspect of Tintin a lot, where it's all of them together.
Love the gang.
But my favorite solo adventure might be King Ottokar's Scepter.
Well, such a classic.
It's a classic, and it's a
is
weird
that the one
one.
with Castafiore? Is Castafiore in that?
I think she
is there for a bit, yes, but like a small appearance.
Because she's by far my favorite.
She's been there like right from the start.
Yeah, with Cassifiore's Emerald and things like that. But one of my favorites,
I believe she's performing for the king in this one at one point.
The king of Sildavia, which is the made-up country. Love that. Oh my God, what a great story.
The two countries which are like at war but are also literally the same country, really. So great.
Yeah, amazing story just about the recovery of this scepter and how he goes on all these adventures. Jishnu, what about you?
To help the king recover his throne.
Yeah.
I'm torn. It's between Lake of Sharks and maybe America. Yeah. Lake of Sharks.
America's great. Yeah. I did enjoy it. I mean, there's the one thing, the non-redeemable factor of Tintin, which is the racism.
To that point. Okay, I'm glad you brought that up because I was just I have it in front of me. I have the whole series on my iPad in front of me, and I was just cross-referencing something. So like I said, I saw Tintin America last night. I saw the TV show, right? Which was made in the 90s. The book was written whenever the hell it was written, years before that.
Must have been like, when does the original style, when the original comics done? Like maybe in the 20s, 30s?
I want to say 50s is when they started, but I could be wrong.
No, that's too late. It was the 1930s mostly.
Yeah, because they're talking about things like Al Capone and stuff like that. Those are like classic, the roaring 20s, 30s kind of mobsters.
Fair
I'm
enough.
pretty sure it must
1929 to 1976, though I don't know what would have come out in 1976. Wow. I'm guessing most of them is in the 20s and 30s.
Correct.
Okay, so here's an interesting fun fact for you. So speaking to the racism, of which there is, you're absolutely right, plenty, tons of blackface all up the wazoo. However, when I was watching the TV show last night, I was really looking forward to seeing the bits where he's dealing with the Native Americans, which is the freaking cover, right? So if you recall,
it is.
The cover of the thing is Tintin tied to a log, and then there's a Native American with like a tomahawk and stuff. They removed that entire plot line.
It's not.
So the
there.
TV show is a little bit tweaked. I think the TV show, since it was made in 1991, they were like, let's do a quick edit.
Pre-woke era.
The best part is like they kept
also because it wasn't written by like one European.
Yeah, that's also true.
But I mean, like they stayed with the vaguely racist accents and like the. Listen, Muggsy, we gotta go find this Tintin boy. See,
yeah, I mean that's that Chicago,
which is great. So I'm glad that they didn't go full.
I'm coming to come after you. See, anyway, but yeah, I think one of my favorite solo Tintin adventures is the Blue Lotus. I think that's a fair bit
that's
of.
That's a great one.
Racism there in it.
Oh, so much.
I remember that being like the most
adult. A lot. Yeah, but it's all about this opium dealing in China and about it's Chairman Mao, pre-Chairman Mao even if you will, and this whole kind of situation over there. But one of the things that I love about it is that it's just like an exceptional story, well written story. I think it's one of the better ones for me. And the other thing is that he's introduced to a character who comes back later on in Tintin in Tibet, which is.
The boy who helps him go up the mountain.
Yes. What's his name? No, 1 second.
I don't remember his name.
Boy?
Probably something racist. Wasn't Tintin in the Blue Lotus was also the one where, if I remember correctly, there's an entire 2 pages or so about like Chinese foot binding.
Yes, yeah,
right?
Yeah.
With
they speak about
very
that.
Bad illustrations,
and
I mean, very good illustrations, but very racist illustrations.
And also, the act of putting babies in the river, disposing of infanticide, that kind of thing. But I mean, I think his name is Chang, if I'm not mistaken. Chang, that part of the story appealed to me a lot because Chang is, I think, an orphan who loses his family in the mix of their entire adventure. And by the end of it, he kind of helps Chang kind of get adopted by this slightly more affluent, like a family who's wanted to have a kid, for a while. And I always thought that was like a really cool. I mean, that story is really awesome. I don't know why I liked it. I always like to see Tintin in like completely different settings, and even though it's prone for some choice artwork and writing, but man, I've always enjoyed it. Tell me you guys didn't enjoy it when you could read what the people in Kathmandu were saying in Devanagari script, and we were just like
the minute there was any Indian anything, and I was like, let's do this, come on. And it was
I will say he's been in India twice. And both times, it wasn't outright racist. It was just like stereotypical in a way, which is probably possible.
Which is still kind of, it's not completely inaccurate there. My favorite scene in that in Tintin Tibet is when Haddock goes and has these green chilies. He thinks it's like fruit or something, like exotic fruit, and then he eats it, and then he just dies because it's a bhoot jalokia, which is amazing.
Man, I have always, not always, but the last couple of years, I've been hunting with minimal effort. So hunting is a exaggeration. I've been thinking about hunting for a blue turtleneck so that I can go as Captain Haddock for Halloween.
Blue Lotus is definitely one of my favorites in terms of a solo adventure, just because it kind of sets up Chang's character and their friendship, and that's kind of really what spurs his entire trip to Tibet later on, because he has a dream about him, and kind of then again goes into this whole Yeti space. But
tell me this. How many of the, growing up, I'm not talking about now, how many of the books did you actually have?
I may have had half of the collection.
Oh, really?
Or maybe more, more than half.
Eventually, I suppose.
No, my brother is also a
right. You
voracious
had
reader.
an older
So
sibling who had started the work already before you came
the
around.
work was begun before I was
Yeah.
there. Yeah,
I didn't
he was really into it.
own too many, but I had access. Yeah, like school library and
Exactly. I too
brother's
didn't own
friends, things
a
like
lot.
that. You know, yeah, I didn't
But
own.
I feel like the ones I did own ended up the ones I really liked just because I'd read them multiple times. And also they were like, it was a pain to collect them because they were sold at the time in India for the princely sum of like 97 rupees, if I remember correctly.
What? That's mad. Yeah, even in Dubai, they were quite expensive, I remember.
Way more expensive.
I will say, man, all this we had read them so many times. The spines of all our books and all were just like fucking falling apart.
Very recently, picked up a new edition of I forget which one, possibly 7 Crystal Balls.
Yeah.
Like I have it lying around somewhere. But yeah, it's all like fancy and glossy, and I'm like, this isn't what Tintin looks like. And also, it was like 50 rupees.
Now that you mention 7 Crystal Balls, that and I'd say a few other stories have a more supernatural bent to them. Did you appreciate which ones did you kind of like more? The more like actiony detective-y ones, or and maybe just tell me which is your favorite Tintin adventure, and why? Yeah.
I actually have one supernaturally story that I really like, and it's one of the late stage Tintins. And
can I guess which one it is?
Yes.
Is it Flight 714?
It is Flight 714.
That is one of the weirdest ones.
It's so strange. Like, there's straight up aliens in it. At one point, they're just like,
they went Kingdom of the
hieroglyphics
Crystal
and aliens. Yeah, they went all out. I mean, yeah, like the ones where there are Inca ghosts and stuff, there's still like, there's an element of mysticism to it.
Yeah.
But, so I was looking this up, and 714 actually came out in the 60s, like the late 60s, 1967, if I remember correctly.
Right.
So, and it was one of the last Tintins. So at this point, do you think Remy George had just been like, well, it, now there's aliens?
Well, the boy has done everything. I mean, he went to the moon. Surely there was
because
he went to the moon before space travel was a thing.
Yeah, exactly.
No, exactly. I think that you're hitting it on the head, because like in the 60s, we went to the moon, or like, the Americans went to the moon. And so it was like on everybody's mind.
Maybe he was trying to predict the future. He was like, I wrote about going to the moon and we went to the moon. Now I'm going to write about aliens.
I think he was a bit of a futurist in some ways. I mean, there are tons of inventions in this series that are really, really cool. One of my favorite stories, I think probably my favorite story is the double, I like it when there are two stories,
Yeah, I do enjoy that.
So I think Red Rackham and Secret of the Unicorn, those are like, and those were the ones that
reverse order. I was just going to say that is probably my favorite Tintin story
because
overall.
You meet Calculus then also because of his invention of the shark sub, which is like, just what is happening? It's so awesome.
It's basically just a giant shark-shaped like submarine.
And it's made so that the sharks just look at it as one of their own or something. I don't know. But I think what I really liked about that is that, it has a bit of like the steampunk, it does remind me a lot of like Indiana Jones. It's very much in the Indiana Jones space, I think, which is why it's got this kind of universal appeal.
Yeah, it's got...
Does he fight Nazis at any point?
No, probably because... Right? No, I'll tell you why. It's because Georges Remy was a Nazi sympathizer.
He was a so
why would Tintin have to fight Nazis? He'd be like helping the Nazis.
Where did Belgium stand on the
whether it was allies or not?
They were not a neutral state. Yeah, they were definitely not.
I'm sure they weren't. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't remember for now. But yeah, I mean, there's no Nazi punching happening at all in this.
Let me Google Belgians Nazis ?
Jishnu, what about you? Which is your favorite adventure from Tintin?
I mean, always have to have a soft spot for the moon story. But then I love, across the board, my favorites will always be the one with the whole gang. Because within the lovely cast of characters, Tintin is not my favorite, not by a long shot. Like, I adore Haddock and I adore Calculus. Yeah. So all the ones where they're all in the family, like the Calculus Affair, of course, 7 Crystal Balls.
Yeah.
And then the Moon one is the best, just because like that's one of the just best stories that they have. Like the
there's so much political intrigue happening.
Sacrificing himself, all these things. Like,
amazing.
It's so great. But I'd say the one that I've read the most, probably, or maybe watched the most, whichever, is the Shooting Star. I think that was the first one that I saw from the TV show. So that just like
another weird
blew my
one,
mind.
right?
It just blew my mind.
Yeah.
But you know what I like the most about Shooting Star, which is kind of like what I like about the cast of characters, is that in Shooting Star, they're on board this boat, right, for however long, doing their research, and it's filled with these old grandpa professors, very, very Eastern European sounding names and accents and stuff, and especially within the TV show, like they went full ham with the hamminess of the extended cast. And so likewise in the book, whenever there's like a big quirky group of characters, I just like that the most. Like when they get to spend a lot of time with just like these 5 or 6 extra dudes who are unique to the story. Yeah, unlike unlike maybe like a Broken Ear or the Black Island or whatever, where it's a very small cast of people plus Tintin, and it's mainly just Tintin going from one guy to another guy. I loved Shooting Star because it was Tintin and Haddock stuck on a boat with like 7 or 8 weirdos, and I loved the weirdos.
Yeah. No, it's I definitely I think Tintin has one of the best like, ensemble cast that is there. He's even got like his like Dr. No style villain, which is like Rasta Populist who keeps coming back, and he's like an amazing villain. But okay, let's just take a quick break. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about some of the underrated stories and maybe the adaptations of Tintin that we love a lot.
Hi guys, this is Ayushi.
And I am Ritasha.
And welcome to Agla Station Adulthood.
It's a fun podcast we've got going on, and we'd love for you to tune in and enjoy with us.
Join us as we stop at various stations and discuss different topics that seem to be bothering us, and hopefully
dating,
you as
relationships, beauty, just being an adult, lots of different things.
We don't have a great grip on it, but we've done okay so far.
Catch Agla Station Adulthood every Thursday on the IVM app, the IVM website, or wherever else you get your podcasts.
But before we do that, we're still talking about Tintin. Tell me, what do you think is the underrated Tintin adventure that people... I mean, the Destination Moon, Explorers, all of that is...
They're all classics.
Yeah.
I have it in front of me. I had to do a quick revision.
Mm-hmm.
Land of Black Gold, because I
so
don't
good.
remember the story. I do not remember the story. What I do remember, and I'm looking, just scrolling through it, it's at least 70% Thompson and Thompson. And that's the sole reason.
Which is
They grow green beards at one point.
They grow blue green beards.
Yeah. That's in Black Gold? No, I think that's in...
it's in the sequel to Black Gold, which is called what?
Crab with the Golden Claws, I want to say. No, is it?
Crab with the Golden Claws is the first parter? Yes, correct. They grow green beards in Black Gold.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Awesome.
So is Crab with the Golden Claws part 1 of Black Gold? Or was Black Gold a standalone?
I can't remember.
I thought Crab is part 2 of Shooting Star.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Right.
And Crab is also... Yes, you're right. And Crab is also where we meet Rasta Populist for the first time.
And all that stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's where
he's actually menacing and not just a goof.
He's pretty menacing in Land of the... what is it? The one with the sharks? What was it called?
Lake of Sharks.
Lake of Sharks. Man, what I love is that Tintin has maybe one of some of the best... The things that I really love about Tintin is that it had continuity, stuff that would pass over from one comic, and then like many comic books later on in the series, you'd see a recurring character.
And yet you could also read them standalone. You didn't have to read them in order necessarily.
That's also true. True. I don't think I read them in order. Yeah. But like one of my favorite characters is also in Tintin and the Picaros, which is General... Salazar, I think that's
who again repeats multiple times.
Yeah, he goes in one comic from being this really like sane kind of very astute kind of general and leader, and when he's in the Picaros, he's lost his shit.
He's like by the end of it, he's totally like out of it.
Yeah, and his wife is the only one who can keep him in check. It's amazing. What a killer! Like all the sub stories in these stories are really good. Dinkar, I wanted to ask you,
Thompson and Thompson, who by the way aren't twins. They're just friends who look like each other.
And and the trick is to basically see the end of their mustaches, where one has a
Thompson
twirl
has
and
the
one
twirl,
does not.
yes.
Yeah. So Dinkar, you, if I'm not mistaken, you went to the Museum of Tintin, or you
I did
were
go
in?
to the Museum of Tintin when I was in Belgium. It's great. First off, like right at the entrance, they have like a 12-foot red rocket from Destination Moon.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
It's like to this day, I always associate red and white checks more so than
with that
black and
rocket,
white.
right?
More than black and white checks are to a chessboard. Red and white checks hold stronger in my head to the Tintin
it's
rocket,
iconic.
you know?
There's nothing
more
else
so
to
than
say.
like a
It's just
picnic
iconic.
basket.
Yeah. Here's something interesting that I just remembered since you brought it up. But there's the Tintin Museum, of course, and there is the Museum of Comics in Belgium because, of course, there's so many great comics that have come from Belgium. And a significant portion of that is obviously also devoted to Tintin. Interestingly, they had an entire like section in the walkthrough exhibit where they were like, also, by the way, pretty racist. And that's not great. But, you know, it was a different this thing.
It was a different time. Yeah,
but like they're not trying to hide it. And also, by the way, another fact check: Belgium was invaded by Germany in World War II. And
so
yet our boy
I'm still
Georges was a
surprised.
Nazi sympathizer.
Weird. Yeah,
Maybe
Yeah,
it was a
like
report.
they're pretty upfront about the fact that there's some unsavory stuff happening in Tintin, and well, they're still good stories. Is the point?
Absolutely. I think it's. I mean, if anything, it's just it's a good reflection of the time. And, you know, we have to remember it with that little context in there.
Yeah,
but you're right. I mean, still excellent characters. Like one of my, I still love, I love the adaptation, the film adaptation, which they made with Spielberg and Peter Jackson.
Which is a completely, I mean, I was surprised that they chose to go with an original story for that one. And I mean,
it's not an original story though. It's like
adapt different bits of different stories. Like a significant part of it is from Secret of the Unicorn. Like
and they kind of abandoned the whole Bird Brothers kind of the arc, I think, a little bit, and they kind of put together. Yeah, there's no Red Rackham's Treasure. It's mostly Secret of the Unicorn.
Yeah,
and
but I mean, they did end it.
That's the name of the film, also.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was just
Adventures of Tintin. Just the Adventures of Tintin.
The Adventures of Tintin.
Like you said, mainly based on Secret of the Unicorn, but they did end it with that, you know, not cliffhanger, but with that door open for Red Rackham.
Call, right?
Yeah. But you know how they took the plot and kind of adapted it in their own way, which is fine because like they did a surprisingly good job. And wasn't it Edgar Wright who wrote it along with
Joe Cornish, if I'm not mistaken?
With Joe Cornish, yes, you're right. Yeah. But yeah, surprisingly great.
Great film, great cast. I think Jamie Bell was perfect as Tintin. I'm surprised they didn't do another. Even Andy Serkis, man. Oh, I mean, first of all,
believe it
that guy
didn't
not
do
good.
very well. I'm not sure why.
Yeah,
man, maybe Tintin needs a reboot of sorts. And I wanted to talk about that. So there is a Tintin Secret of the Unicorn kind of game based on the film, and now there's a new Tintin game that is being released. So perhaps that's the best way to kind of experience it. Man, Tintin point and click adventure would be amazing. Or even
what is this Tintin game? Is it? I haven't heard about it.
There's nothing else that has been announced. They just announced that there's going to be a game. But man,
we could end with
a
Dreamcast if and when the live action were to happen.
Ooh.
I mean, everyone's going to say Tom Holland, but I think Jamie Bell himself looks a lot like him.
He does. Tom Holland also kind of looks Tintin-y.
Yeah. But you have to have the coif, the hair.
The cowlick.
Honestly,
the cowlick, yes.
What's his face? Taron Egerton? I think could be great.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, Taron Egerton could be. Actually, he would be perfect.
So Simon Pegg and Nick Frost played Thompson and Thompson in the voice cast movie, right? And they'd be perfect as Thompson and Thompson, except they don't look like each other. So should we do like Army Hammer and Social Network type technology
absolutely.
and get
we have to. Yeah.
Simon Pegg in a double role?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Two pegs. 2 pegs, please.
Man, it would be. I'm surprised that movie didn't do well. It was
but the other Simon Pegg has to be voiced by Nick Frost, of course.
Nick Frost, correct.
Or you can do it the other way, like 2 Nick Frost and 1 voiced by Simon Pegg.
I'm all in.
Get Alan Partridge, man. Steve Coogan. He's perfect.
He'd be a great calculus. He'd be a great calculus.
Yeah.
Or John
Cleese. Calculus Jeff Goldblum.
Hey. No, I think
already kind of
Goldblum would really do a good job as a villain if whoever the hell the villain is. think he's the
As a
perfect model.
Rastapopulous?
Yeah, sure.
You know who Rastapopoulos is, by the way? It's Tom Cruise's character in Tropic Thunder.
Les
Is
Grossman.
basically Rastapopoulos. Les Grossman.
Oh man, yeah, I think, man,
Who's
yeah,
your
it
headache?
could be awesome, and they should get Meryl
Pedro
Streep
Pascal
as
is Salazar.
Meryl Streep as Madame Castafield.
Of
Yes.
course.
With that angel voice. Hell yes.
Doing her Julia Child voice.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, basically the Meryl Streep voice.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, it would be perfect. Oh man,
Who's Haddock?
yeah,
Who's
that's
Haddock?
a solid cast. Haddock.
Oh, we haven't
I mean-
cast Haddock?
Our friend Krish Makija is pretty much a perfect Captain Haddock, but yeah, I think Andy Serkis could pull it off, man. If he wanted to, he would be perfect.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, he could definitely. He has the same height and build as him, so
Yeah.
Haddock is a
I've been
slightly
playing.
tough one.
I've been playing a lot of Red Dead Redemption lately, and that guy, the video game character from Red Dead Redemption, is Captain Haddock.
nice.
What's our boy who's in Stranger Things and Black Widow?
Ooh, David
And
Harbour.
he was
well
Hellboy?
done. Yeah,
What's
David
his
Harbour.
name? David Harbour.
David
correct.
Harbour.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right?
but no Americans.
I'm all
We need
in.
an all British cast.
Well, he's Belgian. What does it matter?
That's also true. Cool.
Martin
Fair
Sheen.
enough. Okay.
I'll give you
Interesting cast. All right. So I think that wraps up our long overdue episode. I want to say of Tintin. We should do one on Asterix also, just because we
Yeah.
want to complete the set.
Yeah,
And maybe we'll. I'm gonna.
I
try
only
and
agree
put
to
up
doing
this-
the Asterix one if it ends in a feast.
yeah, a banquet.
A banquet, yes.
But we have to tie this guy, the Cacophonix, to the to the tree. But anyway, let us know what you guys think about Tintin. If you have any memories of it growing up, and who would be your fan casting. What would be your perfect ideal cast for it in a live action film? And yeah, that's our episode. Thank you guys for joining us. All right, see you later, you nerds.
Filter coffee is a fascinating beverage. You need to pick the right beans, blend them in the right proportion, roast them to perfection, and slow brew at the right temperature to get the perfect cup. Which is exactly like great conversations as well. You need to track down the most interesting minds, get them into their zone, and settle down for an unhurried, unscripted chat. And coffee for me is always, always, always best enjoyed with friends. I'm Karthik Nagarajan, and do share my table as I meet some of the most interesting people I know and sit them down for a strong cup of coffee and an even stronger conversation. Join me every Wednesday for a freshly brewed episode. This is not frappe. This is the Filter Coffee Podcast.
Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli, Don Bradman, and now Cyrus Brocha. Okay, probably not in the right company. I mean, Don Bradman is Australian. But it's called Cyrus Says, a wonderful show about everything. Find the show on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts.